My wildcard is finally active and we've so much to cover over the international break. Who's on penalties for Arsenal? Is it time to get rid of Mo Salah or bring him in? Would it be silly not to go with triple or double Arsenal defence? Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today will be my Game Week 8 wildcard draft as we head into the international break. I'll show you my Game Week 7 score. Be sure to skip on if you have no interest. I'll show you a template wildcard 8 draft and a lot of players that I think a lot of managers were going to want to pick going into Game Week 8. And then I'll show you my own team and my current draft. Now, a lot is to change, so do keep that in mind. Let's get straight into it. So quickly, before we get into how my team got on in Game Week 7, I would like to invite you guys to hit the like button. 400 likes is the goal for this video, and do subscribe if you aren't already. We're on the road to 10k. So getting into the Game Week 7 score, lads, really disappointing so far. Just to note, I am recording this just after the 2 o'clock kickoffs. So City are expected to kick off in the next 10 minutes. So Foden and Haaland, who are in my team, of course, have not played. But I can't imagine they're going to change too much. We're currently on a rank of 300k. Again, this is midweek. And unless Foden does something astronomical, it looks like we're going to be on a fat red arrow. So from 100,000 down to 300,000. Not too bad considering the circumstances. Let's pick away at my team and quickly explain some of my picks for the week. So this game week I done Cody Gakpo to Matheus Cunha, which did not work out at all, unfortunately. But saying that, I don't regret the decision at all, of course. It was small margins, of course. Cody Gakpo coming up with the goal versus Chelsea. Matheus Cunha not starting the game. It was a close call between Cunha and Eze come the end of the week. But I decided to side with Cunha, again, attacking the fixture. And in all fairness, overall, I wouldn't say I was too far off. United played quite well. I did expect United to do a small bit better versus Sunderland, and of course they did. Brian Mbeumo, of course, got the assist, and Bruno Fernandes, who almost scored, small margins again, and was one off DEFCON before today, but now it looks like he was 3 off DEFCON. So the United boys in my own team quite disappointing, and my transfer overall disappointing, especially with Gakpo returning. But again, you can't predict those things, and I was always going to play the fixtures, and I'm quite happy with my decision making. Let's move on to the only good thing of the game week: Pedro Porro and Kudus, of course. Kudus coming in with a goal and assist, and he looks phenomenal for Spurs. I love watching him, lads, and he actually gets me off my feet. I'm so excited to watch Spurs when Kudus is on the pitch, and it seems to be every game he's on the pitch playing 90 minutes. So, amazing return from the Ghanaian, and the other Ghanaian returning, which I don't own, with an 18-pointer, of course, Antoine Semenyo, giving me a big red arrow on Friday night before the game week even started for my own team, which was disappointing, of course. And one which we'll talk about in the next section. I don't want to talk too much about each individual team because I will talk a lot about that in the next section. But quite disappointing, of course, Antoine Semenyo. Not owning him, but a lot of managers don't own him who weren't on wildcard. So fair play if you own a massive haul for you guys for sure, and you are creeping up on me. Next, we'll take Nico Williams, of course, where Ange Postecoglou played what looked like a 3-4-3. Very interesting system. Nico Williams picking up a yellow card. Unfortunately, losing 2-0 to Newcastle again. I feel like Forest have been really poor. I don't need to tell you that. Looking at the results, they've been poor. I watched the Villa game, so didn't actually quite catch the Newcastle game, but from what I've looked at, they were very underwhelming, and that has been Ange's team so far. Now, again, I always did think that the transition from Nuno, who was the opposite type of manager to Ange Postecoglou, is going to take time, but they should have never sacked him in the first place, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Are Forest going to try do a Spurs of last season and concentrate on the Europa League? I'm unsure, but let's see what happens with Forest. Robert Sanchez, of course, a 2-pointer, which was a close decision with him and Dubravka. I played Sanchez because I thought he could get some save points. He didn't quite get save points, but he only conceded the 1 goal, so nothing in that. Matty Cash and Ollie Watkins, again, very disappointing this game week so far. Both blanking, and Burnley did score within 60 odd minutes. Matty Cash actually almost scored, and Ollie Watkins, who got hooked after 60 minutes. So very disappointing game week so far. Again, Foden and Haaland to play. But that's enough on my game week 7 score. Let's move straight on to a game week 8 template. So if I was on wildcard, these are the players I would be targeting if I could get every single player I wanted. Again, you can't actually make this team. Again, you have 4 Arsenal in it. It's just a lot of players that I think will be included in a lot of wildcards if you are going there this week, and a lot of popular players in general. So let's talk about the Arsenal boys first. Who's on penalties for Arsenal? That's the first thing, I suppose. Saka or Gyökeres? Now, in my humble opinion, I don't think there is a for sure answer. I don't think Gyökeres is on penalties. I don't think Saka's on penalties. And to be honest, that's 200 appearance for Saka and his 100th goal and assists. I feel like there is something in it. And if I had either Gyökeres or Saka, to be honest, I'd be quite happy owning them with the run of fixtures they have. So overall, no definitive answer in my opinion. If I could choose, I'm gonna say Saka if I had to choose, but I do think there's very little in it, and it could still be either. I don't think it was a definitive answer. Moving on to Gabriel and Timber, and we'll also take Raya. Timber and Gabriel also hitting DEFCON in that last game. Again, very impressive performances, and Timber winning a penalty. I feel like double Arsenal defense will be the template, and for good reason. By far the best defense in the league and really favorable fixtures. It's whether or not you want to double up on Gabriel or Timber, or Raya and Timber / Gabriel. Now, I would just note on Timber, he is definitely more of a rotation risk in comparison to Gabriel. I still feel like Ben White is always looming around, and we've seen it in previous seasons where Timber does miss out on the odd game. But for that slightly cheaper price of 0.4 million, if anything, if it is that, I believe Timber got a price rise last night. Very likely that if you are on wildcard, sorry, you are having a double Arsenal defense. Next is Senesi, who I think is fair. I mean, DEFCON monster. Except this game week, he's after breaking the deadlock, and he didn't get it this week. Fortunately enough for myself, but I still feel like with Crystal Palace away, a lot of managers will bring him in or hold on to him if you aren't on wildcard. We'll also take Semenyo next. He's one who I think is an interesting talking point. Now, for me, where I stand with Semenyo is he's by far been the best player in the league if you're not accounting for Erling Haaland. He looks absolutely transformed, and people comparing him to Sadio Mane at Southampton. Now, Semenyo against my own team, Spurs, he absolutely destroyed us. And I did see this with my own eyes, and I also did watch the game Friday night. So when we get onto my own team, I just wanted to make this section to make it known that I am aware of how good Semenyo is. But now he comes in at a price where I think you can make it a decision with the fixtures coming up if it's justifiable until the fixtures turn again. That's the only thing I will know. And again, I'll speak a small bit more on him in the next section. Let's move on to the double up on Chelsea with Enzo and Pedro, who I feel like are definitely great assets going into Wildcard 8 onwards with really favourable fixtures. And Pedro, who has been underwhelming in recent weeks. A lot of managers talking about getting rid of him, in fairness. And also Enzo, who has been quiet in recent weeks, but I feel like with this pairing going in with those fixtures, they could be a really nice combo targeting that Sunderland fixture. And again, Ange Postecoglou's Nottingham Forest now, and really, really nice run for Chelsea overall. And that big win for Liverpool really will bring them onto the next level in terms of what they're pushing for. So I'd imagine, even though Chelsea have been not the greatest, I would say, due to the red cards. Definitely the spirits will be high coming back after the international break. And I feel like they come in at two really good price points at around 6.7 for Enzo and 7.7 for Pedro, which in comparison to some other strikers like Isaac, Ekitike, so on and so forth, even Bowen, Pedro probably is better value with those fixtures. Let's move on to Paqueta and Bowen, who we just touched on briefly there. Again, it is more so the fixtures and the new manager bounce with Nuno coming in. Bowen with really nice fixtures, again, coming in at 7.7. I feel like we will see him on some wildcards. Whether or not he'll be in my own, we'll see in the next section. But Paqueta also, who a lot of people are calling a cheap Bruno Fernandes, I see it, to be honest, and he is quite cheap. And again, it's just the fixtures and potential with DEFCON and penalties what that makes him a nice little asset to own. Just on Bowen, I'm quite high on Bowen. I would love to own him come game week 8 and definitely have some decisions to make. Dubravka and Alderete, who I won't touch too much on, I feel like will be in a lot of wildcard teams. Again, 4.1 now for Alderete, and Dubravka is still 4 million. Anderson, on the other hand, is one who's picking up DEFCON almost every single week. and only coming in at 4.5. No price rises just yet. Not the greatest opening fixture with Arsenal at home, but for 4.5, he's definitely one I have a keen eye on. So that's the template players for Wildcard 8. And I won't be surprised to see any single, if not multiple players in a Wildcard 8. Let's look at what I'm doing. So getting into my Wildcard 8 draft, lads, two things to note. I'm on my own route and I'm on bench boost 10, which is what I'm thinking. So we have a decent bench, nothing crazy. And the team is a small bit different due to some of the caliber players we have. Again, as you can imagine, who's going to be in this team with the back line we have. You mightn't guess, but it is definitely a different draft, and we have plenty of time to tinker between the international break. I've activated my wildcard and I've brought in a lot of players to catch the price rise. And by the way, if you are wondering why I keep looking up in the top left corner, I'm actually currently watching the City game. Rodri's gotten injured and Erling Haaland has scored, of course. Shock horror. Anyway, getting straight into the team with Dubravka on goal. And we'll take Dubravka and Verbergen together. Verbergen is the only 4.4 playing goalkeeper. Again, he's had a price decrease, and his fixtures to come are really good. Dubravka playing Leeds at home, which I would prefer to start than Verbergen with Newcastle at home. Again, I don't know if I'm sure on going Dubravka and Verbergen versus the likes of Araya and Dubravka. Again, it's more so thinking long term, where I think my funds are going to be. Again, right now it mightn't look ideal, but down the road, I think this is where I'd like to be. Again, I do have Raya in my actual current team to catch the price rises. So let's move on to Richards and Munoz, who have just picked up a loss versus Everton after 19 consecutive games with no loss. Richards and Munoz both picked up DEFCON. I believe Richards picked up 10 and Munoz picking up 16, playing very, very advanced Danny Munoz. And again, he was in this team before the games even kicked off. So a good sign, of course, even though they did concede 2 to Everton. For me, Danny Munoz at the start of the season was one I really wanted. I didn't end up going there. And Palace have looked amazing so far this season, regardless of that loss. Again, we head into an international break now, 2 weeks without football. But Danny Munoz, I feel like, regardless, is always going to pick up good positions on the pitch. Palace are always going to play in a similar type of way with Ollie Glasner's team, and that's just in a way where their defenders are going to pick up good DEFCON as the weeks go on. So let's move on to Jurrien Timber, who I think is probably the weakest link in terms of consistent starts in this Arsenal team. If you're asking me now, he is by far the best in terms of that right back position, but I just feel like there is going to be games where he will be benched, so maybe it is a small bit risky, and he is for good reason probably the cheapest out of starting Arsenal defenders. But I think it might be a risk that I'm willing to take. I feel like this season is a small bit different. He definitely adds a different side to Arsenal in terms of attacking threat. He does get forward a lot, and he is a very high XGA. Expected goals and assists so far this season. So definitely one firmly on the radar, and he can pick up DEFCON like we've seen last week. So let's move on to the bench with Calvert-Lewin, Anderson and Mukiele. Again, this is the target game week 10, where the fixtures for Leeds, Fulham and Sunderland look quite good. And also Verbergen, who plays the Leeds at home. So Anderson, who I feel like will definitely be on my wildcard. I feel like for 4.5, he looks phenomenal. Mukiele, who's only 4 million, which is a decent option. Again, Sunderland have looked good, irrespective of that loss to United. And also Calvert-Lewin, who doesn't look great, but for a bench boost and a 1 week punt on a bench boost, I'm happy to have him. And he might come in handy if I get any injuries from game week 8 onwards. Again, he's definitely not a mainstay in this team. I imagine he probably will move, but my mindset right now is to get a nice bench for game week 8. But that's the defense and the bench for my game week 8 wildcard. Let's move straight onto the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, lads, I think if you've been watching me before, if this is your first time watching me, you know I do things a small bit different. Not because I'm trying to be different, but because I do try to think with my own head and look away from what other people are doing. So 2 things we definitely need to look at in this team. Mo Salah is in and he has the armband. The next thing is also no Antoine Semenyo. Where to start? Let's start with no Semenyo. So, like I said in the first section of the video, Antoine Semenyo is phenomenal. If you already have him and you picked him up at 7 million, fair play. He is great. And even at 8 million, I think he's great value. He comes and plays Crystal Palace in game week 8. And the fixtures until 12 don't look so good for Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth are a team who are going to score a lot of goals. And he is, of course, on penalties. But at 8 million now, is there other players at that price point or cheaper that I can look at who I think can do well? Maybe not necessarily better, but better for value. And with Mo Salah in this team, I've had to look for routes other than Semenyo. Now, you could make Semenyo a mainstay in this team and say Mo Salah has no place in this team with players like him around and Saka and Palmer. Fair enough. For my own draft, again, you're going to see future iterations, I'm sure, on my channel, and I'll keep updating the draft with maybe Palmer, maybe Saka, no Salah. Again, I'll make another video with 3 or 2 different drafts in it. But for now, my gut feeling is Mo Salah. And the reason is, come game week 12, 13, 14, 15, I feel like there's no world in which I won't want him. If you were to ask me now where I think Salah's season will be, I will still say that I expect him to get 20 goals. Come the end of the season. I don't think Salah overnight has just suddenly lost his ability. And to be honest, I think this international break will do him a world of good. Now, United at home is a great fixture for Mo Salah, of course. It's always been a good fixture for him. I think even a poor form Salah with this United team who've conceded chances versus Sunderland. Again, Sunderland could have easily scored. I feel like Salah home to United is definitely a great open fixture. He then, I'm fairly sure, plays Brentford and Villa. Do correct me if I'm wrong. And let me know in the comment section if you can understand where I'm coming from. But Salah's fixtures in game week 13, 14, 15, lads, I can't look past them. And again, we are in game week 8, only 5 game weeks away from 13. I'd imagine that a lot of managers, if Salah does anything in these games versus Villa and United and Brentford, that everyone is going to think twice and maybe want him back. Now, you might say going no Salah might save you extra transfers down the line, but transfers are there to be spent, lads. We get another 5 in game week 16. Again, I'm just going to be off the back of a wildcard, so I'd like to think that I'd be able to roll 2 or 3 transfers come that point. I'm happy to have to spend transfers at some point to get rid of him. And I'm sure, I'm almost positive Salah is not finished as an asset. Whether or not he's worth the 14.4 now after a price drop is definitely justifiable. But for me, I feel like he has to be in the team. So who do we have to complete the midfield in order to accommodate another player who is also 14.4 million, maybe 14.5 at this point? I'm unsure. I've lost track because I've owned them since the start of the game. But let's start with Enzo, who I did slightly touch on. I feel like Chelsea's attack does look quite good. We've seen Moises Caicedo score another goal. Not Enzo within the goals this time around, but for 6.7 million, I think he is great value and potentially on pens with Cole Palmer out. Just on the Cole Palmer situation I'm unsure where we stand with Cole Palmer currently. There's talks of him potentially getting surgery. Again, I'm sure over the international break we'll get a lot more information on the likes of a Cole Palmer. But for me, I'm happy to go with Enzo, regardless of Palmer's situation. He's a player who's going to play regardless. Sure, he might miss out on the penalties now. But I feel like Chelsea can score goals for sure versus Forest, Sunderland at home. And I'm going to want options from their teams respectively. Now, sure, you could go with a Chelsea defender, but with the amount of injuries, I don't want to go there. So I'm happy to go with Enzo, who can potentially pick up some DEFCON also. So Enzo is in the team for now. Next, another player who is not so bad with DEFCON, Anderson. Again, he only got 10 this game week. Now, I just want to say, again, this was recorded before the game versus Newcastle. And to be honest, I done this on purpose because I didn't want it to change my opinions on some of these players. It swung in the favour of some. For example, Sarr was also in the team and Manoz. But anyway, Anderson, who goes with Chelsea at home. With a deep enough bench of Calvert-Lewin, Anderson and Mukiele, I'm happy to have another asset who's interchangeable with them. Again, mostly for the DEFCON, and he's going to pick up an interesting position in this Ange Postecoglou's team. I honestly couldn't tell you where he's going to end up playing, but he's going to be starting, and that's in my opinion for sure, because how good of a player I know he can be. Again, he's not quite got the goal contributions we expected, or I don't know if anyone expected any goal contributions, but the returns maybe have been underwhelming. But I feel like at 5.4, he comes in at great value. Another player that I could be looking at is Tijani Reinders with Everton at home in game week 8. But Anderson, I think, will be one who will be quite differential, and I like the fact that he's got tough enough fixtures to the point where he can definitely get DEFCON, but some nice fixtures also thrown in there if we can potentially get some attacking returns. And if not, I could play it forward back with Anderson or play Calvert-Lewin, which I don't love. But Anderson is definitely on my mind. And again, it's more of a value thing. If you can get me 4 or 5 points every single week at only 5.4 million, I'm happy. And he accommodates some other players in the team. Let's move on to Mohamed Kudus, who I think is a really, really interesting talking point. For me, Spurs have only lost one game since Thomas Frank's come into the Premier League. And I feel like Frank is getting a lot of criticism. Again, Spurs are in the top 5 positions in the current table. For me, Mohamed Kudus has been the best player for Spurs without a shadow of a doubt. He looks so confident. And if I'm Thomas Frank, part of my thinking is to get this Spurs attack ticking is how can or how will I structure our attack so we can score goals? And if I'm looking at my front three, which is currently Odegaard, Xavi Simons, Kudus, and let's include a Richarlison / Mateus Tell, I'm looking at Kudus and going, how can I turn him into my Brentford and Buemo? And sure, you can say his goal threat has been quite underwhelming, but the way I look at it for Mohamed Kudus is I've got him for 6.5 million. I feel like if any of the big 6, or even Newcastle at that point, had an attacking player who was going to get 90 minutes every single week and comes in at a price point of 6.5 million, we'd be looking at him. For example, if United had a winger at 6.5 million and played 90 every single week, we'd be looking at him. Same if it was Newcastle, and same if it was any of the big boys like City and Arsenal. Now, I'm not trying to compare Spurs' attack because we are quite lackluster. But we do know Thomas Frank relies on 1 or 2 individual players for goals and assists in his side. Again, maybe we don't have the data to quite go off that, but we've seen it from the likes of a Brian Mbeumo and also an Ivan Toney. And I just wonder if he's looking at Mohamed Kudus and looking to put him in more advanced positions. Now, Kudus has got the returns, 1 goal and 4 assists, I believe, and some decent attacking trait. He could have scored last week. He did get his first goal in this last game with a massive haul. But I do just wonder what Frank will be thinking with time to think over the international break. And again, Kudus doesn't go off to AFCON. So he's on my mind for sure. And because I've got him in at 0.2 less than everyone else, I'm just wondering if I can grab some value there. Again, completely understandable if you don't want to go Kudus and you want to stretch the funds to get Semenyo. Let's move on to Ismail Assar, who got an assist. Could have easily had 2 if it weren't for Jean-Philippe Mateta. Again, Sar's numbers have been phenomenal over the last season, and even this season before he got injured. He comes in with a decent fixture with Bournemouth at home. And again, Crystal Palace's team is well oiled, and they're looking to score goals every single weekend. It's looking likely they're scoring goals every single weekend. Always creating chances, and not just chances, it's high quality ones. And Sarr is a player that I've had my eye on since he's come back from injury. I feel like he could be some great value in comparison to Jean-Philippe Mateta, who is that million more than Sarr. So I feel like Sarr is definitely going to be in my wildcard draft. Unsure if he's going to be here come the actual deadline, but I think it is likely. And I do like the idea of getting a piece of that Palace attack. So that's the midfield, lads. Let's move straight onto the forward line. So moving on to the forward line, lads, we've got João Pedro and Erling Haaland. Haaland, who I don't need to speak much about, as he's just scored again. And it looks like with my team value in Erling Haaland, there's no reason or world where I go without him. Sure, the fixtures get worse for City, but I think it does not matter. He is a man on such form that he could end the season with 35 plus goals. I wouldn't be surprised. So let's talk about João Pedro, who is the other man beside Erling Haaland. He plays Nottingham Forest away. where I stand with Pedro is I'm happy that a lot of people are considering getting rid of him, and he has been underwhelming. Because again, I don't have him in my actual team, so I'm more than happy that he blanks. But I think if you consider the circumstances with the amount of red cards, for example, that Chelsea have had, and also um, tough enough fixtures, I would say, for Chelsea, I'm happy to bring in João Pedro with the fixtures, and I feel like he is going to be a big player for Chelsea in this run of fixtures where they're green. I feel like again he's always influential, even if he's not having shots, which I know a lot of people are talking about. But again, I feel like it's been the circumstances for me, and I'm more than happy to play the fixtures. I've definitely looked at Jared Bowen at the same price instead of João Pedro, but I think I could be potentially captain João Pedro in game week 8. And I'm more than happy to just go with him for the time being and hopefully pick up points. Again, I don't want to speak about this team like it's solidified or anything. Again, I imagine, lads, so much is going to change. So stay tuned on the channel. I'll try to release a video of each week of the international break, so you're up to date on where my head is at. But this is where this current draft is, and you're probably looking at this team and going, Christ, this team is useless. Mo Salah, who looks not even half the man that we know he can be, and people are actually looking to get rid of him. But again, lads, it's about setting yourself up for the future. And if you can look past his first 7 games, and again, Liverpool look really poor overall, 3 games lost in a row. I feel like the team is good. I could differentiate myself on a week-to-week basis with Salah captain. And it could be little things with having the insurance with Haaland in the team and hoping players like Anderson and Enzo tick away nicely and the Crystal Palace boys slowly pick up DEFCON. Again, this is with a bench boost 10 in mind, which is a pretty good bench boost in comparison. And I'll be looking to get the value out of the bench after it's used up, before I get the 5 free transfers in game week 16. So yeah, it's just about keeping the team flexible, lads, and future-proofing myself. There is an argument, of course, to go without Salah, bring the likes of an Anderson to a Semenyo, and a Kudus sidewards up to a Saka, perhaps. But it's just my current feeling. I said before this game week and the game week before that I would like Salah in this particular game week for the future run. And I feel quite firmly about this. So let me know in the comment section what you think of this team. I completely understand if it's not for you. Again, this is my draft, so I'm more than happy if you don't like it. But it's just where my head is currently at. And again, unfortunate to get a red arrow this week. I feel like the progress has been going so well for us, but it is the nature of the game. There are going to be ups and downs, and hopefully, off the back of wildcard, regardless of what team I go, I can see a big green arrow, of course. So let's wrap up the video there, lads. Again, do hit the like button and subscribe if you aren't already. And I thank you so much for the support recently on the channel. It's been amazing. But I'm going to wrap it up there, lads. And leave a comment and let me know what you think of this team. And as usual, lads, I will see you in the next.